On January 9, 1997, 57-year-old Juan Castro Pachun, a farmer living in La Paloma, Paine, Chile, was returning home on his horse after inspecting a patch of wildflowers for his boss. As he approached a crossroads, his horse was suddenly spooked when a large black figure flew over him. Pachun was violently thrown to the ground. From what he could tell, the figure came from either the top of a nearby mulberry bush or from behind it. Pachun stared at the figure. To him, it seemed to be a somewhat blurry black color and was wearing a cape. It strangely resembled a winged combination of eagle and human, with dark, tar-colored feathers which protruded around the cape. Its face was also tar-covered, the eyes fiery red. Pachun was terrified. So was his mare, apparently, as it bolted from the scene, leaving Pachun alone on the road. The strange creature then lifted off, flying in the direction of Pomo Hill. Pachun saw what appeared to be black boots hanging below it as it flew away. Terrified that it would come back, Pachun ran away, screaming in terror. When he returned home, he told his wife and young sons, but they did not believe him. Robert Vediger interviewed Pachun 2 years later. Pachun was convinced that he had encountered the devil that January day. 1971, Marshall County, Minnesota. A man named Roger encounters a strange-looking being in a field by his home and is nearly killed. It was July around 9 p.m. Roger was out at the woodlot behind his barn. His collie dog Bonnie was there with him. At some point, Bonnie started barking and running towards the far edge of the woods, which was adjacent to the property. He called for her, but she continued running. Roger began to chase after her. As he got closer to the small field, he spotted his dog laying down looking towards the sky. He looked in the same direction and observed a bright yellow light coming towards them. As it advanced on them, Roger noticed that the light was getting larger and brighter. Bonnie barked a few more times and then ran into the woods. Roger sensed that she was scared. He was also scared. Eventually the light moved over until it was directly above him. Roger wanted to run, but realized that he was paralyzed. I looked at the light and started to make out a shape. I have always said that it was a balloon man. It was round in the body and segmented legs and arms. The head was a bright yellow light. I couldn't see a face, just a bright, blinding light. It hovered for a minute, then moved towards me. It was right in front of me. I'd say it was 8 foot tall and very wide. There was an intense heat coming from it also. I had trouble breathing and was very uncomfortable. Then it started to hover and circle around me. I thought I was going to pass out. Then suddenly it just disappeared, simply vanished. As soon as it did, I dropped to the ground and started shivering. Roger soon realized that he could move again, but he felt strangely sick and extremely weak. He found himself unable to stand or even crawl. He heard his mother calling for him, and then he realized that Bonnie was beside him, barking their location. Following the bark, the mother found him in a heap. She was frantic, desperately trying to get him to his feet, but he could not stand. Eventually his older brothers arrived and carried him into the house where a doctor was called. Roger recalled that he was bedridden for a week. The doctor said I had a severe reaction to poison sumac, which I know wasn't correct. I had a sore red rash on my face and arms. Roger was convinced that the balloon man he had encountered was the reason for the rash and the illness. After he recuperated, he told his mother what had happened that night. She was rightly surprised, but also acknowledged that she didn't believe that he had fallen victim to poison sumac, but at the time did not feel it was appropriate to question the doctor. I never told anyone else about my contact with the balloon man, but I told my brothers not to go into the far field at night. They just laughed. Lon Strickler of the Phantoms and Monsters blog reached out to the man, who told him that, not long after the event, his beloved dog Bonnie passed away from an acute heart ailment. Lon noted that similar beings, nicknamed Michelin Men, have been seen over the years by people around the world, although he is uncertain if that was what Roger encountered. Ultimately, if this happened and Roger was not hallucinating, it does seem like the being or beings he encountered that July night were far from friendly. Had Roger encountered them far out in the woods, away from family, friends, and other people, it's likely the event would have proved fatal. A hunter encounters a strange craft in the woods and is left seriously burned. This case was investigated by Edison Boaventura, Jr. of the Brazilian-based UFO group GUG, and it further suggests that more than just wild animals are lurking in our world's forests. It was October 1977. 78-year-old Jose Benedito Santos was hunting with some friends in some woods near Chapada marshes in Maranhão, Brazil. At some point in the night, the friends were separated. While trudging through the darkened forest, Santos noticed an orange light hovering above a stand of trees. Suddenly there was a bright beam of orange light that illuminated his surroundings. The entire area was lit up like daylight. Just then an object seemed to drop to the ground, landing behind a group of trees a few meters away. Although quite frightened, Santos cautiously approached the object. As he drew near, he noticed that it was an oval-shaped craft, about 6 meters long, with a red, shiny center. Suddenly, from behind the object, a figure appeared. He was short, standing only around 3 or 4 feet tall, wearing a silvery suit with a transparent helmet equipped with what to Santos looked like an antenna with red lights at the tip. On one of its arms, the humanoid had 3 golden stripes, possibly insignia. The most frightening aspect, the thing that terrified Santos the most, was the creature's eyes. They were black and penetrating. As the creature advanced towards him, Santos, although armed, became overcome with fear. He began to panic and desperately wanted to get away. That was his last memory of the encounter. He woke up later, surrounded by his friends who were desperate to find out what had happened. The friends had apparently not observed the craft, or the creature, or the fact that the forest had been lit up like daylight for a period of time. However, they did notice that Santos had a small burn hole in his neck, which was purple in color. For the next few days, Santos felt sick and weak. The burn mark healed over the course of the week. November 26, 2015. A man in Arkansas encounters a Bigfoot creature and shoots at it. What happens next is stunning. According to the witness, he had been dropped off by his cousin at a hunting location near Searcy. It was mid-afternoon. The cousin was instructed to return a little after dark to pick him up. Unfamiliar with the area, the witness began scouting the location. He found a good spot on a hill and perched himself on a rock. It had a good view of the woods and an open meadow. About 60 minutes after arriving, he noticed that there was very little activity. Suddenly, something caught his attention. A low growling sound that went on for about 10 straight minutes. An avid hunter all of his life, the man was surprised that he could not identify the animal. He knew it wasn't a bear, or a cougar, or any kind of big cat. He had never heard anything like it before. Then about 30 yards in front of him, a pack of coyotes burst out from the tree line and ran across the meadow. Not long after they left his field of vision, a rock landed near where he was sitting. The rock had come from the tree line, very close to where the coyotes had bolted out of the trees. Witness quickly grabbed his rifle and began scouring the tree line, ready to fire on whatever might be lurking there. Since it was starting to get dark, and not knowing the area, he became concerned at the possibility of encountering a black bear, or big cats, or even feral hogs. The last thing he wanted was to get hurt. Using the flashlight attached to the rifle, he scanned the area. That's when he saw something standing behind a large oak tree. Whatever it wasn't a bear or a big cat or a feral hog, nor was it human. It was something he had never seen before. A strange creature standing and imposing, 8 feet tall. It was covered in light brown hair. Its arm was wrapped around the front of the tree, which was at least 3 feet wide. The witness noted that when the light hit the creature, the eye color appeared to be a reddish yellow. Even stranger, when he lowered the light, the eyes appeared to still be glowing. At that point, it let out the low growl he had been hearing, followed by a high-pitched scream. The witness became frightened, and in a sort of knee-jerk reaction to the scream, he raised his rifle, pointed it at the creature, and pulled the trigger. He was certain that he had nailed the tree from the sound the bullet made when it hit. The creature charged off across the meadow into a valley in the same general direction the coyotes went. The witness watched it run. It was massive, absolutely bipedal, and was gone in about 3 to 4 seconds. Still shook up, the witness took a moment to gather himself, then walked over to the tree where the creature had been standing. There he observed what looked like blood and hair on the tree. He felt he probably hit it in the arm since the bullet strike was square in the middle of the tree, where the arm was wrapped around the tree. After a moment of reflection, the hair stood up on his neck and arms as he realized what he had just seen and shot at. He sat down for a moment to gather himself. He decided that he was going to follow the path the creature took, even though he knew he was asking for trouble. Speaking to BFRO investigator Carter Bouchard in an hour-long interview conducted on November 7, 2016, the witness indicated that his adrenaline was flowing, and because he thought he had hit the creature, he wanted to follow it to see if it was down. Even Bouchard found it odd that somebody would want to track an 8-foot-tall creature in the dark woods. I had the gun and it ran from me, and would probably run again if it saw me, the witness told him. According to the witness, he continued on, walking for about 10 to 15 minutes, slightly off trail. Eventually he happened upon a teepee-like structure, at least 8 to 9 feet tall, with a lot of animal bones laying around it with an awful smell. As he approached it, he heard a rustling sound across the open area near a briar patch. He turned and saw a creature standing there looking at him. The briar patch came up to the witness's chest, but was about knee-high on this creature. He was about to raise his rifle when he saw a second creature, shorter than the first one, step out from behind a thicket. He described the hair as about the same color as the first, light brown. He then saw a third creature that was much smaller than the other two. This one had reddish-brown hair. He also noted that 2 of the 3 had eye glow shine, though, given the intensity of the situation, he did not remember exactly which ones were shining and which ones weren't. The strangest aspect of all, despite being faced with taking on 3 hulking creatures, the witness felt no desire to raise his rifle and shoot at them. He indicated to Bouchard that he felt as though he was looking at a family unit and was totally in awe. They all stood staring at each other for approximately 10 to 15 seconds, and then the creature simply turned and walked away into the forest. The witness estimated that the time from the first encounter to the teepee encounter was about an hour. It was dusk and getting dark quickly, so he headed back to where his cousin was going to pick him up. The entire elapsed time from being dropped off to the final event he estimated to be about 5 to 6 hours.